Hello, this is Brian Howergan, and welcome to Hour 2 of the Quourm teacher cohort. In this module, for Module 1, we'll be exploring block programming, text, and Boolean variables in Quourm. This session builds on the foundations we established in our live session, moving from basic output commands to storing and manipulating data using variables. We're focused specifically on text and Boolean data types, which are fundamental building blocks for more complex programming. So let's start with an overview of what we're covered in this hour. We'll be exploring how programming languages compare to natural languages, while natural languages like English have more flexibility in expression. Programming languages are more precise and structured. Our learning goals for this session are to learn basic keyboarding and mouse operations for using blocks, understanding blank blocks and how to use them, and work with text and Boolean variable types, and explore accessibility features in block programming. For our warm-up, I want to consider this question. How does learning a programming language compare to learning a natural language? Think about it. The difference between memorizing words and from a static list versus using an adapted system that suggests words based on context. The comparison helps us understand the difference between text-based and block-based programming approaches. So let's dive into the fundamentals of block programming in Quourm. There are four key components or concepts to understand. One is double cursor system. Unlike traditional text editors with just one cursor, block environments have two, a vertical cursor inside text fields and a horizontal cursor for line positioning. The dual cursor approach helps navigate both within and between blocks. Second is the blank blocks, which are empty lines of code represented as blocks. You can create these with the Enter key, allowing you to type code directly. This is a powerful feature that bridges block-based and text-based programming. Third, for moving and editing code, you have multiple options. Drag and drop blocks, use keyboard shortcuts like Control X or Control C, or navigate with arrow keys or the Tab key. The flexibility accommodates different working styles. Finally, comments allow you to add notes to your code using the double slash comment, the multi-line, slash star. The image shows the Quourm blocks interface with the block tray in the left and the editor areas in the right. So now let's look at the text variable slides. Now, text variables are storage containers, like a little box which stores something in the computer memory that hold textual data, any characters, numbers, or symbols, or text strings. To create a text variable, you use the syntax text name and then the value, which and it equals a value. And here's an example is like if you have a text greeting, hello, that would be your value. Then you name another variable, text name, and your value is world. And then you use concatenation, big word to use, to join two text strings together. So we could do that by, joining the two variables of hello and world together by doing, concatenation. And these text variables can then be displayed with an output, spoken with say, combined with your text, and stored to reuse throughout your program. Now, Boolean variables are storage containers, again, that can only hold one or two values, and they are either true or false. They're named after mathematical George Boole and are fundamental to computer logic. To create a Boolean variable, you have a Boolean is active equals true. Boolean variables support several types of operators. Of course, there's comparison operators with the equal, less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than equal to, and the not equal. For example, the Boolean result equals 5 is less than 6. The result obviously is true. Logical are some other ways that include and, or, and not. The Boolean combined like equals true and false combined is false. The truth table on the slide shows how the and the or operators work with different combinations of true and false values. The not operator simply flips Boolean values. Not true produces false, and not false produces true. The image shows the variable blocks in Quourm, including Boolean variables. Now let's look at some concrete examples of what we've discussed. So we have here some text variables here, text greeting, which we talked about, hello and world, and then we bring them together with the text equals greeting plus a space, the quotes is a space, and the name, and together that becomes hello world. So this is, and then an active true or false statement you have down here is true, and a Boolean is complete, is false. And then we have the blocks there to show you how they look like in the blocks. Now, accessible features with Quourm, there are many. And this is the key to the Quourm programming language. For screen reader support, Quourm is designed to work with screen readers like NVDA, JAWS, and VoiceOver, providing context clues based on academic research. It also compatible with Braille devices, allowing visual impaired users to read and write code throughout the tactile feedback. That's the exciting part of Quourm, the accessibility for those with visually impaired disabilities. For keyboard navigation, users can navigate with up, down arrows to move between blocks, tap to move to the next part of the block, shift plus tab to move to the previous part. Advanced navigation shortcuts include Control-Shift-H to jump to previous action, Control-Shift-N, jump to the next action, Control-Shift-B to jump to current scope, and Control-Shift-M to jump to the next scope. Quourm uses an accessible graphics design philosophy, making visual programming elements accessible through alternative representations for screen readers and keyboard users. As the Quourm philosophy states, the big idea is to keep the graphics and the fun to the greatest extent that is reasonable, and to be inclusive as possible. Great philosophy. So let's look at a few classroom activities. Now you will be working on some parsing problems, and that you will work with those with your students if you use this software and this program with them as well. But let's look at some activities you can do if you want to think about even further. For blank blocks and comment practice, have students create blank blocks using the enter key. Add single line comments using the double slash. Add multi-line comments with the the slash, star, star, slash. The goal is to become comfortable with these block editors, interface, and documentation. Then there's text practice. Students can create text variables, concatenation strings, and output the results. You got Boolean practice, which they can do. And they can create variables with true, false values, use and or operators and not. The goal is to understand how to represent and manipulate these elements in Quourm. So, for wrap-up discussion, teaching tips here, a couple teaching tips. Start with guided practice for independent work. That's what a lot of the parsing problems that go with this are part of that. So, yeah, and then you can also, use real-world examples that connect the students to experiences. Encourage students to protect the outputs of a running code, to look at it. Have students explain the code to each other. Highlight accessible features for all students. Have students discuss pros and cons of the block-based versus the text-based. That's a good interaction with students to really think about the difference in programming. So block versus text. The chart compares block programming and text programming across several characteristics. Block programming scores higher on ease of use, general learning curve, and error prevention. Text programming scores higher on transition and professional coding. Accessibility varies between the approaches, with Quourm specifically designed to improve accessibility in block programming. The key insight for research in the block environments help beginners to learn, but gain tend to be short-lived. Students typically transition to text-based programming after a few weeks of block programming. Discussion points to consider with your students is accessibility. How does Quourm approach to accessibility block programming make computer science more inclusive? How might blank blocks help students transition from block-based to text-based? And what balance of guided instruction versus free exploration works best when teaching with block? And then how would you explain the difference between text and Boolean variables to students who are new to programming? So those are some things to consider. Now, the next thing you know that you will work through, if you look here, I will share, you will work through this is the section that we will work on, okay? And this is section 2, the hour 2. And I was showing you the Parsons problems there, but you have this hour 2 that just I kind of went over in this little video. And then if you look to, if you scroll down and you look to, you have these Parsons programs that go along with it. And each section has a Parsons problem. And you work through these, okay? And you work through these with your students, or you can have your students, you can do some with them. And you can do, when you work with your students, you can do some with them, and then you can give them time to work on the rest. And we do provide you with the answers at the end of this section. But remember that you were filling out this document that I have created for you, which we had from our introduction. We did this section where you could fill out as we went along. It ties into the information on the website for each hour. And this is a way for your students to interact and yourself to interact with the information as you teach it. And I have got a wrap-up questions that I would ask you to do, even if as you do this through your process, because you will submit this each time because there are discussions. And then with this section, with section 2 that we just went over, you will work through this section. And you will, again, if you want to work through this helps you remember stuff. This is a way that you can go through this, have the students fill in this information so they have it. It helps get that information into their memory. And then it links right to the block programming and the parsing problems that they will do. It has the wrap-up question that I asked you also to do for this section. And then, this is all part of your, and then there is a section for the next, there's a group of questions and a part for the next section too. So I hope that if you have any problems, please reach out and work through the parsing problems, fill in your workbook as you go along. And hopefully this is the beginning of the excitement of using Quourm programming language.